What an amazing session. Thank you all so much. I kind of feel like I'm the music at the Oscars. As soon as my face pops up, everybody's like, oh, we got to wrap this up quickly. So I apologize for that. But thank you so much for that discussion. It's really interesting how technology protects us from unforeseen events, like what happened with SVB, and how technology helps us pivot so quickly. Very cool. That was an awesome discussion. So this is it, y'all. This is the golden hour. We are here, and I see my friend Chandrika. How are you?
Hey, Katie. Glad to join you here.
We just connected on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So you all are going to be talking about this golden hour and how this is the time for procurement to shine. So absolutely. I'm very passionate about this. You may know this. I cannot wait for this discussion. The panelists, like I'm starstruck a little bit. It's so great to be here with all of you. So I am going to go ahead and pull this up here. Thank you all so much for your patience. Yes, so let's go ahead and get started here. Chandrika, go ahead and let us know what you're all going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so, I'm super excited to welcome Gary and Steve here to this panel. As I've noted this many times before, there is so much content out there on how procurement should behave in a recessionary environment that I'm super excited that we are actually going to crystallize, some key actionable insights through our discussion today. Just to kick us off, I'll do a quick round of introductions. I'll go first as your moderator. I'm Chandhrika Venkataraman. I'm the founder and lead consultant at Source Refresh, which is my business, where I provide procurement consultancy for small and mid-market businesses, helping them deliver profitability. Over to Gary. Would you like to introduce yourself, Gary?
Of course, thank you. And thank you to Opstream for having me. I do appreciate it. This is going to be fun, I think. Yeah, my name is Gary Bernstein. I'm the head of procurement and strategic sourcing at ClickUp. I know the title. I saw my title was a lot more inflated than it really is, and on the advertisement. So sorry, I'm just the head of procurement and strategic sourcing. From at ClickUp, we're if you haven't heard of us, we're a startup in the kind of productivity space. Before being at ClickUp, where I was again brought on to build the procurement team. Basically from scratch. And I think when it comes to procurement, that's not always exactly true because procurement is usually one of the last teams to be thought of. I was at GitHub prior, and at GitHub, I was part of a team that was already established, but I found myself in a situation where I was the lone person after only a couple months because people had left, and I was then tasked to rebuild the team there and fix some of the processes as we continued to grow very, very quickly. And that was all in the middle of the beginning of COVID, I should say, and which was an interesting thing for me to do. Now, again, we'll dive into this with these questions, but the market has changed considerably from the time that I was at GitHub through my time here at ClickUp. So anyway, that's I'll just leave it at that. And thank you again for having me. I appreciate it. And I look forward to this.
Steve, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Steve Wilson. I am the Vice President and Chief Procurement Officer here at FICO. I oversee not just procurement, but facilities and global real estate as well. Before FICO, I was the either Chief Procurement Officer or Head of Procurement at companies like Equinix, VeriSign, and Yahoo. And in between time, some of those companies, I actually was the CEO of a SaaS startup that was sold. So yeah, very interesting times right now. And so I'll let you dig into some of the questions.
Yeah, so just to get us started off, obviously we're talking recession, we're talking procurement, and that naturally, I mean, even without a recession, I think procurement is most often associated with cost optimization, but you add recession to the mix and there you have it. So one part of me says, oh, this is great. Like, procurement is in the driver's seat. We're in a leadership role. What better opportunity for us to drive cost optimization? Is this the case? Is procurement at the right place at the right time? What have you guys seen? Steve, why don't I start with you?
Yeah, sure. I think if we're not taking advantage of this opportunity for procurement to add value and have a bigger seat at the table, then we've lost an opportunity. And certainly at my company, we are now involved in much more than procurement. We're involved in discussions around COGS and how we can work with the sales team, both in their BOM as well as how can we educate them in working with procurement. And so there is opportunities that we've never really seen before due to inflation, supply chain issues, resource concerns. And I believe, and I've certainly talked to colleagues that not only is the value that we're adding much more transparent and available to executives, but I know at my company, I have a quarterly report that is read by our CEO and other executives, and they often come right back to me asking questions and deal with me direct, whereas I think 10 years ago that never would have happened. So absolutely, this is a huge opportunity that procurement cannot miss out on with the environment that we're facing today.
Great. Gary, how about your experiences?
Yeah, and of course I agree as well. I think it became obvious very soon when the R word recession was first whispered as a possibility, which I guess it still is a good possibility, and how we need to cut costs. So of course people look to procurement. Now I think to make it successful, procurement can't do it alone. Like I look at procurement as we're just the ones who we manage the process and we have our important points. We make sure that everything gets done and done well, but we need the buy-in from all parts of the organization. Leadership needs to buy in. They need to, of course, and I think in this environment, they can't help but be on top of or look to cost savings. But it's not just that. It's, because again, procurement can't do it alone. And here at ClickUp, I think we're in the process of a huge money saving project. And it's really being, I'm working closely with our IT team, because now we're looking at not just the spend of the upcoming renewal orders, but we're looking at, do we have the right IT mix? Because when things are great, people will much more frequently allow for new software to come through that has a huge overlap with what we already have, just because there's a couple features that we might not have based on with the current software. So anyway, I just think working directly with IT has been really helpful, and we're helping to slow things down and getting the awareness to our business users. Because I will say that from a company perspective, it's more of talking about overall cost savings. What can you do to stop cost savings? Stop traveling as much and things like that. But when it comes to procurement, sometimes people will look to procurement for it, but not realize that it's not just procurement. We have to do it with everybody. But I want to make another point about which I think is interesting, because the way you asked the question, I appreciate it, in the sense of like at least the golden hour or so. Because when I was in other places where the economy was booming, and I was trying to say, let's get in the habit now of looking at these things. And oftentimes, the priorities are different. I understand that. So, but still I think, and the priorities being like, let's make procurement as easy as possible for our business users. They have their things to do. Let's not take as much time negotiating. Let's not hold things up because, again, we might have this software and there might be some redundancies. And again, I just say, well, that's going to make it harder later because it's, the economy is cyclical and it's going to happen, and it's going to be harder for people to have to think of spend cuts at that time. And of course, I'm sure it is a lot in a lot of places, but
we've talked about being at the right place at the right time. Sounds like, again, from your experiences, the right leverage too. What are some of the challenges though that we are seeing when it comes to spend management? Just a couple of top of mind challenges that you're seeing.
Well, if I may, because I think what Steve and I have is a very different perspective in the sense of I've worked at big companies and know procurement is done much better in a lot of ways in a big company, and it's more at least the company, very large company I was in, it was just something that was a part of the process where, when you're in a startup, you don't have all the tools you might need. So I think, tools are a big thing. It's like, do we know what I mentioned IT, but really like a lot of what I'm looking at is just what's been looked at manually. So, and if we don't have those right tools in place to, again, look at what we have and what we're spending and be able to run reports in an efficient manner, it's sort of sometimes done a little blindly. And, again, if the data is not something we could recognize. So I think that, from the top of mind, that really is having the access to the right spend.
Right. Yeah, visibility. Steve, how about you?
I think that for me at FICO, whenever I came to the company, it was a very odd cheer that I haven't seen in a lot of companies. When a procurement leader came in, they were excited to put some process and have other experts negotiating deals rather than doing it inside the business. And I think as Gary mentioned before, the challenge at a lot of companies that I see, even for procurement leaders, I've been there a long time, is they're not getting the inroads that they should be getting immediately. And that comes with making sure that the CEO and the E team are enforcing procurement involvement in everything that we do. And so what we've done, adding to what Gary said, is we've implemented software review committees that we run and manage, and all the leaders of the company are there to make sure that there is transparency with everything being ordered. Everyone has a seat at the table, and we manage that meeting. So it enforces the fact that we have to be involved from day one of a scoping of a particular project, making sure that redundancy and standardization and all of these other things are managed effectively. But another issue that I see, and this is happening at FICO, is we are kind of a victim of our own success, so that things like MSP and TPRM and other areas they're wanting to push that to procurement to manage. And so I'm very sensitive of that, because I want to make sure that we're not engulfed with other tactical activities that may not be owned typically by procurement, but other groups like our CISO and our CIO feel like we can just manage it better. The challenge is making sure that we still have enough resources to adequately drive strategic value across the organization. And so that's one of the challenges in the time of kind of our economy and potential pre-recession period that we have is how much are we going to allow to take on ourselves and potentially deviate from what really our focus is within the company.
So, in the past, I've kind of, glamorized procurement by saying, oh, we are detectives. Oh, we are actors. Oh, we are this and we are that. But in today's environment, right, we're actually sort of like police, right? Like we're policing and trying to balance the, budgetary needs or budgetary diktats that we have with your stakeholders' demands. In your, Steve, I'll ask you this question. how do you see procurement being proactive and setting the right processes in place so that we don't come across as a hindrance to the business?
Yeah, I think it's both, we're police, but we're also internal, sales reps, because we have to be business, development advocates for what we're doing within the organization, and it has to be a mix of governance as well as demonstrating our value so that it's easy for the business to say, you guys are doing it better. You take this off my plate. I want to get you involved early on because you have the more seasoned experts to do this better. And so much so now that our CEO and CFO say, Steve, if there's anyone not following this process, you let me know. And again, that's the type of advocacy and oversight that you want, right? So,
music to my ears.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing if you can get there, and there's always some challenges within any organization, but I try to hire people that are tremendous at relationship development and communication skills, almost more than anything else, because they're going to need to advocate and articulate the value that we're going to be adding and almost managing up. It's managing horizontally and vertically within the organization. So that's a big deal for our group, and it's one of the reasons that we've been very successful at FICO.
How about you, Gary?
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, I have to agree, with what Steve just said wholeheartedly, and of course been envious that his CEO and CFO are have that attitude. That's fantastic. It's what we all need, but it's I think probably credit to Steve for having those relationship skills and having the results that show that his procurement team and his procurement function has brought that value. And I think that talks a lot. So when the business doesn't necessarily doesn't look at procurement in that positive way, you have to kind of have these wins for them and show that if you come to us, that this is what we can do for you. So I'll give you the answer. What I think is where I'm going towards it. I'm not there yet, but I think the first step was, again, getting some wins, and getting some wins are now more frequent, because getting being less reactive and being more active with these requests. Because what I was seeing when I first got where I am now at ClickUp, there was requests coming in for, say, software purchases, new or renewals, within like a week or 2 weeks of that renewal, when you can't do much except push it through at that point. So really just getting the knowledge out there. It's like, listen, we need it ahead of time. And part of it, again, it's on procurement to make sure that we have the information, as I said earlier, the right data, the visibility to the data that's accurate, to ensure that we're able to look way ahead of time, so we can be the ones that are actively going out to the business if they're not coming to us. And so and we've done that, and we've gotten a ton of savings over the last few months as a result. But I think, ultimately what my goal is for this is, I always look at it as having a seat at the table. That's something I've had when I've been at bigger companies, where you try to, you have to forge those relationships, as Steve said. And if you're managing certain parts of the business as the procurement manager, different categories of spend, getting those relationships where you can kind of be a part of the team. So when they have those meetings, that you're there, even if you're not actively speaking, you're hearing what they're thinking about, what's their plans for the next year, the next 3 months. So what's coming down, and you can help, with, stick to their budget or decrease, or spend as much as possible, or spend as least as possible, but have savings as much as possible. And I think that's, I'm not there yet, and it's just because we're not, I don't have a big enough team, but I think that is something where, when we get there, again, that gives you that visibility that we're here, we can add value to those meetings, but also you can see by having us there what that can do by looking at a year in advance, and there's no surprises on either side. Because again, though, the change that they've already seen, the business has already seen, is again, those wins, if we have enough time, we can get you those wins you need to make you look good. And that's, I think, very important to get the buy-in.
I appreciate how candid you are in, laying out where exactly you guys are, as well as laying out the path, right? And that's, like you just said at the start of, the discussion, that's the beautiful contrast between, ClickUp and FICO. And I'm loving the insights that are coming out of this. So let me ask you my next question, right? Technology and automation, right? And now, this is all we've talked about, I think, since the start of the year. And adding the recession to that, what is, in your experience, what are you seeing as, how is leadership viewing technology and automation? Is it more of a long-term play? Are they actually investing in that this year? Or are businesses saying, let's just take some shortcuts, let's just figure out how to drive down costs? What are you seeing on your end?
I mean, it's probably different for me than it is, for Gary. Again, different size companies. For me, we are absolutely investing in procurement. I've actually only been at FICO now going on 3 years, and I had a plan that my CFO highly supported, and I'll go to what Gary said previously. It does start with the low-hanging fruit. And once you capitalize on that low-hanging fruit, you then evangelize and report on that low-hanging fruit, and that it ends up being much, deeper layers into the opportunities. And what we've done is we've created internal business reviews where we're not only talking about procurement, but seeing how these guys should be following protocol. And it's really done a great service to us and my team to get more involved. But from a technology procurement perspective, our company as a whole is focusing on platform. We're developing our own procurement platform with a hub and spoke mentality with everything we're doing. So whether that's kind of a CRM to sourcing, TPRM, automation, talking directly and in an automated way with suppliers back and forth, whether that be for onboarding or just for new information that we need from them or we need to pass on to them. All of this is we're looking at better ways and more efficient ways of doing things that might be quite different from what Gary's experiencing. So I'll hand the ball off to him and let him talk about his experience.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there was definitely a shutdown of technology spend that happened fairly quickly. That doesn't mean we're not making those investments, but the leadership as part of the procurement process is ensuring that before that those investments are approved, that the business has to show what's the return on investment, what's the business case for this. So so everyone does get the fair look, but they have to be able to show that. It's not always easy to do, but from a one that went through recently was a SaaS management tool. And again, going into what I had mentioned earlier was manually looking at our SaaS, at our tools. It made no sense to not be able to at least consider a SaaS management tool. And I said, it's easy, I think easy to make the case because we buy all these licenses, but we can't easily see how many are actually being used and which ones are being used and how often they're being used. But a SaaS management tool can do that, and you're saving so much time. Now it's harder to quickly, because things here move very quickly. It's hard to do it quickly to get the numbers that say, okay, we're going to save X number of hours by these people on our team. But there is, again, we're a productivity company, so that anything that can increase our productivity is looked at positively. I mean, we always want to look at ClickUp itself first, but again, that's not something that that's obviously something we're not going to do well, because that's not what we're made for. But if we can show that that's going to help the team, then yes, absolutely, we're gonna look at it. But again, and this again is something where it's not just procurement, and I think procurement should have limited power in some ways, and having IT, our VP of IT, like, next to me saying, you know what, I saw your justification for this spend, but let me force you to kind of give more information, because we can't just say we're not 6 months ago or whatever, a year ago. We need to really make sure that this is something, because not just the cost of the software itself, it's the implementation, it's the change management, all that comes into play and has to be considered.
Yeah, and my experiences working with small and mid-market is more in line with, Gary, what you've seen, right? It's more in line with what you've experienced, which is let's clearly understand the ROIs, and like you said, total cost, right? The total cost of this whole change, including change management costs and everything else that might be bundled in. Steve, I liked what you said. You said you guys are developing something in-house. Are you doing a phased rollout, adding on features as you do this? What's your approach there?
It's absolutely a phased rollout. So we're because of kind of the group that I have, I also have a team that oversees systems and governance. We are involved in anything related to finance, legal, the governance process, if you will. And so we are doing a phased rollout with TPRM that's going to touch legal, it's going to touch cybersecurity, it's going to touch privacy, and it's always also going to touch procurement. And so that's going to be a phased rollout, as well as our CRM tool. Our CRM tool is mainly going to be owned by legal, but they want us to help drive it. And so again, I mean, with not just project activity, but a value-added activity to the business, if you show that your group is going to be a meaningful contributor and success of the project, I believe that is kind of step one. One of the things that was mentioned about budget and that type of thing, we try to proactively put ourselves in the middle of those discussions with the business and with FP&A, and we're the hub and they're all different spokes. And so when you're in the middle of those discussions, they can't help but to include you early on. And I think that is a very big point that I'd like to make to all procurement leaders. Oftentimes we're kind of waiting, like was mentioned, our VP of IT, we're going to tell him what he needs to do for us, as opposed to him saying this is okay for them to do. So I think as a procurement head and the value that we're adding, I think our challenge is to make ourselves more valuable within the organization. And I know that is difficult, and procurement has sometimes been kind of the stepchild in an organization. But I think right now we can reverse that and make ourselves, I mean, there's a lot of CPOs now reporting to CEOs instead of CFOs or below. And I think now is that opportunity.
So, just a procurement joke on the side, right? Seat at the table conversation, you're saying be the table itself, right?
Exactly.
No seats anymore. We are the table.
Yes.
So let me ask you another question here. So I love this question just because it helps, I think, for an average audience, somebody who might not be closely linked with procurement too. I think this question helps connect the dots. So, we all know of the marketing funnel, right? There is a similar concept, the procurement funnel. The procurement funnel really says, the top of the funnel is strategic, decision-making. The bottom of the funnel is tactical, right? And, in the procurement world, the top is, vendor selection, RFPs, and, all of your strategic pieces of the procurement function. And the tactical really has to do with your negotiations, contracting, and all of that. From your experience, what percentage of your time would you say you spend in top of the funnel decisions versus bottom?
I'll say for me, it's reverse of what it should be. It's probably 80-20, well 20% bottom of the funnel, 20% top of the funnel, excuse me. So so very not as much strategic as I'd like, but again, I think that has to do with the maturity of our organization as well as the maturity of the procurement function. And that's something I need to do is help get there. And that's what I said earlier is when being able to as the processes continue to improve, as the tools are in place, and being able to and again, there's two of us on the team, so freeing up our time away from some of the tactical, more of the tactical things and tasks into being able to kind of reach out to them. Because when it comes to RFPs, man, I haven't run an RFP in a really proper one in quite some time, because it's just by the time I think a lot of these choices are made, like even the choice of we need to go with this new software this year, it's like made so kind of last second that we need this implemented very quickly. So a lot of things, it's not there. So that's why I said earlier was getting, I'll say the word again, the seat at the table, but just having the look into what these different departments are looking at as far in advance as possible, kind of help being able to say, let's launch an RFP, and here's, we can put that together and get, be able to compare all the things that we should be comparing to. But again, for the most part, it's like, it's more reactive than it should be. And as a result, I'm looking at cost savings, but and again, now making sure that we're not duplicating some of the software, which is strategic and good for the company, but not as much as it should be.
Yeah, on my side, I guess a clarifying, question that I'd have for you, Chandhrika, is do you want to know what percentage of my time or what percentage of my team's time is spent at the top versus the bottom of the funnel?
Why don't we talk about both? I think that's an interesting distinction. Tell me about both.
Yeah, so my time, I would say 90% of it is at the top of the funnel, because I only get involved in corporate-wide events and negotiations. So only the strategic activities. I almost started to sing when our deputy general counsel, our head of IT, our CIO came to me, with all different projects and said, "Steve, we need your help. This is." And really soliciting my feedback and assistance, on the very first step of the process of a project. And I think that speaks to, hey, we've added value on all these other things and are moving up kind of the value chain within the organization. So myself, I only negotiate, the very, very large deals or participate in the company-wide kind of needle movers, if you will. My team does it all, but with the software review committee and with a lot of our internal protocol, we're only, my sourcing and category management team are only really looking at activities that are over, say, $100,000 or $200,000 annually at a minimum. And all of those have to follow a specific protocol. And with all of those, we are either doing an RFP or some sort of sourcing event. And again, that's probably the difference between me having a larger global team and, Gary kind of trying to put in place some of these, processes and systems to manage those. And I think that, I'm at a point now where it's great. I'm only doing real estate deals where, it really moves the needle for the company. I'm only involved if there's, a kink in some of the negotiations, or they need me when our, deputy general counsel says, "Steve, I need you on this deal." And again, I almost feel like, gosh, have we arrived? Because, this was not the case.
You're describing my dream job here.
Yeah, even 18 months to 2 years ago, I mean, it was not the case. And over the last 12 months, I believe, because of the success, because of what we've put in place from a policy and a governance perspective, they're almost required to go through us on step one, and frankly, they don't mind it because it takes work off their desk on the business, and they know we can do it better, and that's a great place to be.
So can I ask you, so you did mention, like, anything above 100,000, 200,000 as per your policy, what happens below that? Is that, do the stakeholders pretty much do it themselves?
So we still have kind of a procurement operations team that handles those transactions. It's much more touchless when it comes to us and legal. And for the most part, those transactions are actually hitting larger contracts that we've already put in place, right? So whether those are IT, equipment or software add-ons, et cetera. And so there's not a lot of, big time negotiation that should go on there. And my operations team still does get involved in negotiating some of those, but not our more strategic and higher level category managers.
This is, like I said, that's the dream job, right? I think any procurement person listening in is going, how do I get there? Was that journey for you getting your organization over there? Like, can you just talk me through that? Like, how did you?
So I had a plan going in, but again, I don't believe a plan can be set in place until you understand the dynamics of that organization and really talk to all the key stakeholders and morph your plan into what's best for the company. We do an internal scorecard at FICO, and we review that every quarter, and we're grading ourselves very harshly on the 12 to 15 areas we want to succeed in. And in some areas, like technology, for example, we don't ever intend to be better than a B, or, because we don't need to be best in class for some of those areas. And I'm sure that is the case very much with Gary as well. I mean, at a startup, you want to be great in a couple areas that really drives value for that organization. And that's going to be different for me at FICO. So I start with a plan, modify that plan, and then we start to implement that typically over a 12 to 18 month period. And sometimes it takes longer than 18 months because, if we need new systems and things that are going to be implemented over a broader period of time. But this has been, I've done this at a few organizations, and it's been the most successful and quickest adoption due to the fact that there was so much low-hanging fruit that we came in with massive wins. And our CEO and others on the E team said, why the heck did we not have someone like Steve here in the past? And that turned heads so quickly. And again, we were almost a victim of our own success. Then the floodgates opened, and we had to, hire more people, which we were allowed to do. And again, this has also allowed us the benefit of getting more investment in systems and governance type activities. So again, I do think that there's a kind of a journey and a plan that needs to be implemented, and I would certainly be happy to share some of that with those listening. But you have to do a couple things to really trigger that plan, and we've been very fortunate, I think, with the company that I'm at now.
That's awesome. That's a great success story, and thank you for sharing that. Over to Gary. As we wrap up, we're getting ready to wind down here. What is the biggest knowledge gap that you are experiencing in procurement?
I think it's fairly basic. And again, if this is going to be a very different answer that Steve gives than I give, but I think it being in a startup environment and the experience levels of those who are part of that makes like procurement often very new, or again, being part of, and sometimes it's because people go from startup to startup before procurement's really established. So just the knowledge of how or why certain things are needed, like having a contract signed in place before work starts, or be, that type of thing, because that happens. We still get that. We'll get an invoice, but like, where happened? Like they didn't know there was a process, or they just said, oh well, I entered the request, I put it in an SOW, and now I thought I could start. Or I have an SOW for a project, I got it signed, and now a year later, it's like, oh, I did something. Well, I had an SOW already. Well, that was for that project. So there's like a lot of that education of just the basics of what you need to actually conduct business and keep the risk at a minimal level for your company. So, I mean, I think that's probably, unfortunately, the truth. And but at the same time, I do see, and my experience has been that people do want to know. They don't want to do the wrong thing. That's oftentimes just figuring that out. And once they know, things get better, and then slowly but surely it helps the organization.
How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges and gaps from a knowledge perspective is just resources in general, and getting the right resources that you need within your company. I think people are becoming much more savvy at patterning their resume to a job description. And, we really need to be highly skilled interviewers, because even at FICO, we've had individuals come in that could not do what they claimed to do in the past at their previous job, and that was discouraging. And so you really need to take the time to interview well, and have different strategies when you're interviewing to make sure they're really bringing in that level of experience. But again, I would rather hire someone that is very savvy and has great communication skills, great business development skills. I can teach them some of the other stuff. There are areas like in risk management, et cetera, that we're hiring that again, you need some of that level of experience and knowledge, and take the time to make sure you're doing it right, because mistakes cost you, cycles, if you will, by bringing in the wrong people. And it's a challenge right now because procurement is looked at higher, and so the amount of qualified, good procurement people is much more scarce than it was, I think, in the past.
That's a very great call out. Yeah, I haven't thought about that. Great, thank you so much, Gary and Steve. I don't know if we have any questions at the moment from anybody listening in. Let me just take a look at this. I don't think there are any questions at the moment. Yeah, so that's a wrap. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for a very engaging discussion on procurement, recession, and spend management. Thank you guys. Over to Katie.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all so much. That was fantastic. Honestly, it kind of felt like y'all took me to church in the very beginning. I was filled with hope and excitement about procurement and how, we're really driving value. But then towards the end, when we started talking about interviewing procurement and procurement burnout, that's something that I hear about all the time. It is, it's a real struggle right now, just because procurement is stuck in the tactical. And they don't have the room to be the strategic partner that they want to be. Sorry, I just saw it. Let the church say amen. Amen. I love it. I love that. That's awesome. But yes, when you speak about, Steve, I think you said it in the beginning, we have a great opportunity in front of us. Really, the only thing keeping us from that opportunity is ourselves. We need to become, yes, we're the policeman, but we also need to be that salesperson that educates the organization on how to get involved with procurement and why it matters. And Gary, I loved your perspective. It's just bringing all of those pieces together. It doesn't matter how big or small your organization is. It's all about moving towards that strategic goal. And the quick wins, the low-hanging fruit. I thought that was an awesome way for procurement to think about. It doesn't have to be all in one. Like, what are the pains that you're really struggling with? What are you really trying to overcome? And tackle those things first. So you're not, like you said, Gary, you're not doubling up on, feature functionality that already exists within the org. So I loved it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. I'm kind of sad to move into this next part, but this is our closing. This went by really fast. I really hope everyone enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed just getting to learn from all of these experts. It's really difficult to get real tangible advice in procurement because we have to be so cagey and protective with our own use cases. So I really appreciate all of the panelists that were so open with their struggles and what they're doing to overcome those pains. It's awesome. So thank you so much. We had hundreds of people join us today. We're very humbled by that. If you didn't get to see the entire session, we did record it. We're going to have, links available on LinkedIn. There is a code here. If you just want to take your phone up and scan that, that'll take you to our LinkedIn page, where if y'all don't mind, follow us so we can keep you up to date on new thought leadership, newsletters, videos, snippets. And of course, we'll get that recording to you as soon as we conclude here or soon after. But this was the very first Upstream Innovation, Procurement, and Finance Summit. And I think it was awesome. I hope that you all did too. I can't wait for next time. Make sure if you have any questions, visit info@opstream.ai to get those questions answered if we weren't able to answer those questions in the chat, but I'll go through that afterwards and make sure that everyone's voice was heard. But this is an exciting time for procurement, and this is the time for us to shine. So if there's something that's a blocker that's in your way, and something that was mentioned today gives you some sort of hope that you can push through, reach out to your network, rely on your community, and talk to Upstream because they're doing amazing things for this space. So I'm sad to let you all go, but this was a great event. It's good to end on a high note. I hope that you all enjoyed everything that was presented today. Thank you so much for all the questions. Thank you, Upstream. Thank you, Art of Procurement. Y'all are rock stars. You know that you are. Go out there and have a great rest of the week. Thank you all so much.